My name is Alex Trenoweth, Agent 144 with the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. We're going to be doing a session on lockdown learning with Jupiter. Joining me today is the amazing Bryan, Jonassen from Norway, and Sonal Sachdeva, who's in London with me. Sonal is at Watkins Books shop, which is an esoteric bookstore, one of the oldest in London. So she's going to be telling us about some of the titles that are available. And we're all going to be talking about how we learn with astrology. So I'm just going to start by explaining a little bit about what astrology can do. Now, I know everyone on the planet is familiar with their star signs or their sun signs. So for example, if you were born, between June 21st and July 21st, you know that you are a Cancer. Well, so that's where your sun is, but you have different planets that will be in different signs, and Jupiter will be one of those planets. And Jupiter is for learning. It's how we take that leap of faith it takes to learn new skills. So your children or your students will have Jupiter signs. And because we teach students in schools by age groups, they'll have Jupiter in the same sign, because Jupiter takes about 1 year to go through each sign of the zodiac. Now, developmentally, about every 3 years, your child will hit a certain milestone. In astrology, we call it a square aspect by transiting to its natal position. So every 3 years for Jupiter, it will be in the square aspect, and the child will reach a certain milestone, and they will learn a lesson that they're supposed to, that they are meant to be learning. So if you're in a class, if you're a classroom teacher, you can use this information to help guide your lessons, to streamline what you're doing, and to help your children and students to enjoy what they're being taught. So I'm just going to start with a couple of signs before going to Sol to talk to her about her Jupiter sign and her experiences with learning. So Jupiter in Aquarius likes to, I'm starting with Jupiter in Aquarius because these children were born in September 2009, 1st of September 2009, and for the rest of the academic year. And these children like to be surprised. They like to do unusual things. As when I was teaching, what I would do is I would have maybe a little bit of reading of unusual things that have happened in the world, or unusual events. I've even talked about crop circles just to get them engaged and get them ready to learn. So if your child is born from the 1st of September 2009 to the end of the academic year, they will have Jupiter in Aquarius, but the Jupiter will change to Pisces at some point in the academic year. So you might need to speak to an astrologer, or if you know how to use an ephemeris, you might need to have to look it up. The next sign along is Jupiter in Pisces. And Jupiter and Pisces children have a lot of imagination, and those children would be born the following academic year. So they would enjoy using their imagination. They usually like to have art and other ways of expressing this creativity. And they are, you have to keep them on their toes, because they'll drift off and stop paying attention if things get too dry. And then we turn back to the start of the zodiac with Aries, and these children like to learn through competing, and they're a lot more fiery than the Pisces signs. So if you have a classroom of these mixed signs, if you know who is who, you can have different tasks and you get them working together to bring out the best in each other. So I'm just going to go to Sol, because Sol actually has Jupiter in Aquarius, and we're just going to talk to her a little bit about her experiences in school. Sol, Jupiter in Aquarius, an unusual way of learning, and I know that your sun is also very near to Jupiter. So can you tell us, about how about your experiences at this age of 11 when you're starting the bigger schools?
Oh, well, there's also this Jupiter opposite Jupiter at 6, right? And that's actually when I started school. I started a year before I was supposed to start. So I was a little bit out of sync with my peer group already there when it comes to astrological, aspects and such. Oh, I have to cancel the spotlight. Sorry, was it too much? like
We've had
this.
a really stressful half an hour trying to go live,
And
and
now I have to cancel the spotlight.
and
You have to
so
Hey,
cancel the
this
spotlight.
has been a
hey.
really big learning
So,
experience for some of us, some more than others.
Alex, you have
hey,
to take away the spotlight
Take
now.
away the spotlight.
Ah,
Okay.
that's what
so
he
yeah,
said. Not my
Alex,
Okay.
spotlight.
There
yeah,
we go.
awesome. So if you cancel your spotlight, then everyone will be able to see Soul.
Oh, and of course, I'm a
Precisely.
Jupiter, so I have to take up a certain amount of space. But thank you, Michael. By the way, yeah, so I was a little bit out of sync from my peer group, and like being Aquarius, you know, it, I started earlier than the others, so I think Jupiter and Aquarius for me was all about speed. It's grasping things quite quickly, and I was quite a racer at school. It didn't take much effort for me to understand anything, but I got quickly bored. This is like boring. Oh God, like I need more. I need more. I need more. It has to be more exciting. It has to be stimulant,
Mhm.
how do you say
Stimulating.
that? Stimulating. Stimulating to my mind. And I guess that's why I bumped into astrology quite early, actually. So around 11, when I started school, like I went into another part of the school, I really started through some of the extra subjects that I got to choose. I started I got some really new ideas about how to see the world and society in general, and that really stimulated something in me. And I remember especially I did like this extra curriculum with this teacher who was media, and he told me something that stuck even now. Like he told me about the 2%, the 2% who are initiating progress for the rest, and how then it drips down into the consensus. This is how the evolution goes in society. You have those unique individuals who are there at the forefront thinking out all these new ideas, and then it starts moving into the consensus, and that really made a difference for me. That was like, I think that was one of my awakening moments when I was just a kid, but I was, oh. And then of course I got a lot of, Aquarius in itself is a little bit on the fringe, so I was blessed with having access to knowledge that weren't exactly mainstream, and it came through my family in particular. Like my father, he was very interested in many things. So for instance, I was exposed to a lot of incredibly deep movies and books and literature that wasn't exactly in my school. Like The Wall, for instance. I think I was 12 when I saw The Wall with Pink Floyd, and that also made a huge impact. So I consider myself to like that, to be certain. There's a certain level of autodidact. Like I can sit down with anything. I just go exploring on my inner levels, and if I get bored, it's like, oh, it has to be something that really catches my mind. I like to move forward at a certain pace, and I think after a while, when I got to the gymnasium, I started to be extremely disillusioned with the material that I had. It's like, this is not who I am. This is not like, there is more I'm sensing something. Jupiter is very intuitive. It's very growth oriented, and especially when you get it together with the sun, like I have. You always have to be expanding. It's like, I,
Part of your identity.
yeah, for me it's just like, okay, so it's very inspired, and it's very self-driven in many ways. You see a lot of people actually studying astrology who have Jupiter in Aquarius. It's a very common placement for somebody who's interested in the esoteric arts or sciences. So for me to have the privilege of being able to study astrology from a very young age, Jupiter is the ruler of my North Node in Sagittarius. So there's something there that plugs it a little deeper into my chart, I guess. Has been like a blessing for me, because being in a situation where I couldn't use that part of me, where I can't use my brain or think or go on that Jupiterian pilgrimage, like where you go on a journey and you're everything with Jupiter, you're trying to find something. You're trying to find that little nugget of purpose, that which makes sense to you. So I always consider Sagittarius and Jupiter's ruling principle to be somewhat of a pilgrimer. It's like, I'm going on this journey and I have to find something. So yay, yeah, pack up. It might take you on faraway places. It's an adventure for a lot of people once it works well, of course. But it's not the same adventure for everybody. And for Aquarius, it's, Aquarius is Uranus. It's a lot of these, if you see Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions in particular, or oppositions, you can be quite sure that this person is pretty much like a genius. They might not be realized, but they have some sort of like quickness. There's a swift capacity to grab stuff. And it's like a fusion of this scientific understanding with this extremely expansive, curious, on the go Jupiter energy. Is like, I have to find more answers here, so it's constant. It's like Jupiter is the one planet that gives off more energy than it receives from the sun. So it's like a little sun. So it's like, it's self-driven in many ways. And if so Uranus in itself is for me, it's more metaphysical. We tend to put it into physics, but I like to put it into metaphysics, because there's like this portal between Saturn and Uranus, and it is definitely the bridging from the visible to the invisible world as we see them through the eyes. You can see Saturn, but you can't see Uranus. And the rules for how life works changes after Saturn. In Saturn, everything is 1 and 1 is 2. So I consider Saturn to be very much like the consensus, try it out kind of science. But once you get to Uranus, you get to some place where it's like, this is interesting. This is not operating as we expected. And that's that's the spiritual sciences.
What I found with Jupiter and Aquarius students is that they tend to specialize in something. And then they kind of make themselves like almost like so specialized that nobody else can engage with them. Like they have a really particular interest. And so what I found was that group work was really good for this Jupiter sign, because they were able to share their ideas so eloquently, and because they were all kind of unusual, it interested students that they were talking to. So I found that it really worked well. And this is what I'm kind of saying about using astrology to educate children, is if you understand the nature of Jupiter, and as you very well explained, Jupiter and Aquarius from your point of view, you can make things a lot easier for yourself, because you're not wasting time trying to guess at what works for the child. You can kind of work with, a few sort of hints how to deliver your lessons or how to engage that child's learning.
That's amazing.
So,
I love that.
Yeah.
I really
so
love that.
Just to reiterate, at around the age of 11 to 12 is when Jupiter returns to its natal position. That means it goes all the way around the zodiac, about one zodiac sign per year, and comes to the place it started from. So that's what we mean when we talk about Jupiter returns. But it's a time of it's adolescence. It's when children are no longer children; they're starting to become young adults. And I actually think it's kind of a terrible idea to have children of this age group all grouped together, so they all have to go through puberty all at the same time, as well as take their exams and get ready for them. So it's a very challenging time. But if you're a parent and you're listening to this, the Jupiter return time is a very good time to get your child being a little bit more independent with their own sort of adventures, to encourage them to learn new languages or to learn a new skill like play an instrument, because a lot of musicians got their start at the Jupiter return. I just read yesterday that Wynton Marsalis, the American trumpet player, had a trumpet when he was young, but it wasn't until his Jupiter return that he started practicing. And now he's one of the most famous musicians in the world.
Yeah, and there's something really, really painful that happens once that Jupiter quest for the truth, which is your truth, once it's suppressed, it's like we often hear, no, no, don't take up so much space. That's a very classic thing to say to people who have a strong Jupiter. And people are like holding back. Saturn is always there trying to put down some boundaries, but I know our whole educational system is very Saturnian in many ways. You're on and you work hard and you get some good results. It's not exactly well, it could be better the way that we encourage people. Or
It's because it's based on a concept that was developed in the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century.
Yeah.
And it's changed very, very little, since then. And, I like I say, I know that home learning has been difficult, but it's just because we've all been trained to be taught in the classroom. Just think, we've been, adults have been taught, our grandparents have been taught this way, our great grandparents. So now we're in the situation where we're going to have the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. We're kind of not ready for it. This home learning and this idea of a bespoke education. As I say, I think part of the reason why it's so hard is because we're trying to learn something that we're just not used to. Just like me freaking out because I couldn't use Facebook Live. It's, oh no, my God, I don't want to do this. I don't. I just want to turn the camera off and I don't know, go for a walk. But it's just like yeah, I'm really good at hiding my panic, but I don't think I was very good today because all the messages were pinging off, and my Jupiter's in Cancer, so I'm a little hypersensitive.
The teacher,
to things that go wrong, on top of having a really crazy Mercury. So we're having to get used to this, and I've seen parents and teachers really arguing with each other. Parents are like, just get back to school already, and teachers who know exactly what schools are like, there might only be 10 toilets and 10 sinks in a school for 1,000 children to use, and they're all sharing and coughing and sneezing on each other and all this stuff about social distancing. Well, I can't see how that's going to work in a regular classroom unless they knock down some walls and stuff like that. I have a lot of primary schools around me that I've been walking around. I haven't seen a whole lot of social distancing going on. So I'm really thinking, I don't know how this is going to work, this things, but the idea is I think we need to embrace new ideas with lockdown learning.
I had two kids, like one is Jupiter in Libra, the other one is Jupiter in Sagittarius. The Jupiter in Sagittarius, that's the girl, she's like 13 now. She was like all in homeschool, sure, not a problem. She was working until 7 p.m, working wildly independently, like completely going on a journey, like watching several documentaries each day. She's like, which one do you think I preferred? The one on the black holes or the one on, like she was going in, like, and then I saw her, whereas my son, Jupiter in Libra, he was like, when can I go out and see my friends? He was like,
well,
there.
that's the air sign, isn't it? Yeah. And what I always used to do with Jupiter and Libra students is, bring up a topic that they're not comfortable with, so that they have to respond, because they need to develop their arguing skills. They're so used to giving way to the other person. But it must have been really difficult. And what I would suggest for those children with Jupiter and air signs is you can develop a little bubble. You can have a couple friends around, as long as they're not going around, and at least this is the way it is in London, they're not mixing in with a lot of different kinds of people. Because the other thing that worries me is that public transport. Most students, a lot of students walk to school, but some take public transport, and I've seen a lot of crowded buses before the end of school. I think it's going to be a problem that we're going to have to contend with for a little while longer, which may mean more lockdown. And then I know that parents don't like it, but it's better that the kids are safe, because the first thing that'll happen if germs get spread and it catches on is that teachers will get the blame. I can't even get my kids to bring their PE kit at the same time every week, let alone worry that they're wearing the mask when they should do, or not getting too close to somebody else. So I because I know what a school is like, it's a real worry for me.
And you live in London. There's like, how much Great London area? 10 million?
There's something like that.
Something like that. Like we live in a place where there's a little bit more space. So it's individual from place to place. So but I'm thinking more in terms of maybe if we could just go back to the Jupiter and Aquarius thing, you know, and how we learn and how we process information and stuff, working independently was never a problem for me. Actually, I preferred it. And once somebody's kind of wanted to chip in, I could get a little resistant, if you know what I mean. It's like, sorry, I'm busy here, you know, hello, I'm talking in the big phone, I'm listening to my inner podcast, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not interested in your ideas. I'm on the quest here, right?
Yeah.
So I could be a little stubborn like that. And I think it's Jupiter in a fixed sign, right? So the fixity comes in there, and I had to learn to probably open up a little bit in group work. Absolutely. That's something, you know, I thought the people that I work with were too slow, to be quite honest. It's just like, I'm a racer. So it's like, done, like next, you know, like just give me more. But it depends. That's the overall energy of my chart in a way. But I've learned a lot, actually. I had to say, like, when I forced myself, I actually learned a lot through cooperation and group work. So I actually get that idea, you know, it's a good idea.
I was just going to say that, you know, I actually forgot my train of thought. I was going to say, sorry, Saul.
It's okay, sweetheart.
I got so much things going on my mind.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, just the Jupiter and Aquarius eccentricity, you know, that ability to work on your own. But in the school, you know, like a teacher is like a conductor, you know, they have 30 students to look after. So the student that finished first, really, they should have something else to do, but more often than not, they have to wait.
Yeah.
You know, if they're speedy learners, you know, and it's difficult for that teacher to get their materials out to students that finish first. So it can be, you know, a real challenge.
It's a real challenge. I could also end up being extremely dominant, to be quite honest. Like, I'm like, me and the teacher had like a long dialogue going. It's like, nobody else thought that was interesting, but I did, you know, like, so, you know, yes. So I had to chew on something a little bit more interesting. I could not stay in public school, and I quit actually before my graduation. So the journey was on, and the quest just began. So it ended me up here, right in front of you on the screen for Cosmic Intelligence Agency, sharing my love for astrology.
How did your parents, how did they encourage you to be an independent thinker? I mean,
Oh my God.
were they on board with it?
Oh, yes. I mean,
Good.
I've been blessed with like a wonderful set of parents who were just like, oh God, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. Like my mother, like we are all Mercury and Pisces in my house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's like the first thing my mother tells us is like, you know what I dreamt last night? And we all have to do a little dream interpretation. And then my father, who's been wildly fascinated and enthusiastic about everything from science to art to literature, and, you know, like, just one of those people who were very curious about things, especially like cosmos. He's like a big, huge fan of anything cosmos. So, you know, I got pretty much stimulation at home. And he always used to say something, well, he still does. He says that you can't stimulate a child enough. You know, like you can't really like encourage thinking enough, you know, like we always had something like quizzes. If you want to entertain my father, it's like, let's do a quiz, you know. Geography, okay, geography. So it's like and then there's always something we can talk about that is not about what we did yesterday, you know, like it's always beyond this physical world. It's into the world of ideas. It's into the world of like more abstract, like the meaning of everything. How is everything connected? So that's how it's been for me since I was a child. At least that's how I feel like. And yeah, they like, it's a good friendship energy between me and my parents, so we can have these long exchanges. And they've always encouraged me. So they're like, yay. My mother was a little worried though when I started with astrology, because it's not really a profession, is it? It's like, well, you can't live of that. And I'm like, watch me. So she kind of like, now 20 years later, she doesn't say anything. She's like, okay, like she's fine.
Yeah, my parents think I'm strange too, but what can you do? But you raised something that I just wanted to just mention. When I've spoken to parents about learning at home, it seems a lot of parents think that what teachers do is that we're only in front of the class talking for the full lesson. A lot of things happen in the classroom that you don't, a parent, an inexperienced teacher might not really realize actually counts as learning. Your daughter watching a documentary, she is learning in her own ways, and I think parents feel guilty if they're not actively teaching every single second during a lesson, but that's not the way it works at school. And I know that we tried to keep I understand that parents try to keep students to the same schedule they had at school, but I think what parents have discovered as lockdown dragged on is that children have their own biorhythms. They wake up when they like, go to bed when they like, and eat when they want, and it's different. Because I know as a teacher I'm so conditioned that I am hungry at the appropriate times. I have to go to the loo at break time. I still have this so deeply ingrained, this habit. So I think that lockdown has taught us that we all have our own rhythms of functioning, and so it's been a challenge, but I think we still have to make the best of it.
That's why when I was 11 or 12 years old at my Jupiter return, I saw the wall. Teacher, leave us kids alone.
Yeah.
It's still stuck in my mind like this. What did I just see right now?
Yeah.
And it changed so much for me in the way that I understood the system. It's not maybe it's not appropriate for a child at my age to see such a movie, but it was there in the shelves. So I thought, what the hell, this is a cartoon, musical cartoon, but it's certainly a punch in the face when it comes to understanding the system. And the reason why I got so disillusioned by the school system when I later on in my 16th year was that I was like, oh God, am I doing this? It's just I feel like I'm preparing to become some sort of work. Like, you've seen these little hamsters on a wheel.
That's exactly what education is meant to do. It's meant to be cost effective. Everybody progresses at the same time. Everybody learns the same thing.
And we have to, because we are producing people who can produce value that is valuable for the general society. I get it. Somebody has to do it. It's just not going to be me. I'm going to produce other things of value, hopefully, like maybe some people find this valuable. I think they do, like meaning. So, but that was and that was my Jupiter return-ish. I don't know. I don't have the right date, but it really changed something.
Yeah. And something else too, around the Jupiter return time is when the brain starts to really develop and is rewiring itself. So between the Jupiter return and the Saturn opposition, which happens around 14-15, you'll need an ephemeris or an astrologer to tell you when it actually, the Saturn opposition ends. But it's only something that people are starting to understand more and more, because it used to be thought that only babies developed so quickly, but actually now we know it's adolescence that the brain development. So it's really important to give children a little bit more freedom, a Jupiter word, to explore, another Jupiter word, the world around them, learning new languages, studying different kinds of religions, mixing in with different kinds of children from different backgrounds. All these things will help that brain development and prevent the brain from being stagnant.
Yeah, my daughter actually started with this COVID thing, with the corona lockdowns. She started studying Japanese.
That is so cool.
That's very nice. And I'm like, okay, so that's what you're into now. Yes. She's still into it, like she's
that is so good.
Yeah, that's so nice. I mean,
and it's something we can't offer at schools. We can't offer Japanese.
No, absolutely not. So, but yeah. So there's good and bad with everything,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sol.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for talking. As I was calming down and peeling myself off the metaphorical ceiling, because I nearly had a breakdown.
It's okay.
It's fine. I was fine all during lockdown, but then get me on Facebook Live and suddenly, it's
Well, it's a little scary, isn't it?
I'm freaking
Suddenly
out.
we are here, sticking our faces out on the big internet.
I'm calm. I'm calm now. Okay, I'm going to do the next three signs, and hopefully I'm not going to mess it up. All right. So the next three signs. Jupiter will be in Taurus from September 1st, 2011, all the academic year, and as I will keep reminding you, it will change signs into Gemini at some point during the academic year. So Jupiter in Taurus students, I found them to be, they need time to sort of digest what they've taken in. So it's not that they're slower, it's just that they just need that little bit of extra time to take in what they've learned. They need to chew it over, to digest it, and then need to get rid of what they don't need. So what I found worked with these students was I kind of, to give you an example, because they're very sensual learners too, that like to touch and they like to taste as well. So what I did I was teaching history, I was teaching the French Revolution, and they weren't getting it very well. And so what I thought is, okay, I'm going to hit them, with some taste. And so we did, I set the room to look like a French restaurant, and I got some freshly baked baguettes to have with the classroom, and nothing with it, just plain bread, which they liked. But then I gave one student who represented the king a really nice bar of chocolate, which he was to eat in front of everybody else. And they soon understood what the problem was during the French Revolution. Jupiter and Gemini students, they tend to polarize into students that are really super speedy learners, or those students who are afraid to open their mouths because they don't want to look silly in front of their classmates. So, you have to kind of identify. And the other thing is about Jupiter and Gemini is that they're natural mimics. So when they're starting to learn how to read, what they're doing is they're memorizing the text and then just repeating what they've heard or how they remember hearing it. And so they're not really reading. So when the teacher thinks, okay, they understand they're reading, and they bring out different kinds of books, well, Jupiter and Gemini will be quiet for a couple minutes, and then the temptation to speak will be there, and they'll need to talk. And so the teacher will be lulled into the sense of security that they've learned something, when actually all they're doing is repeating what they've heard. Now, Jupiter in Cancer students, I found them a challenge, and it may be because my own Jupiter is in Cancer, but I know that what I hated most about being taught is I hated to move to a different desk. So I hated it when there was a new seating plan and I had to get used to somebody sitting next to me. And also we tend to be a little bit, as learners, we tend to be a little bit oversensitive to what we're hearing. So we're reacting emotionally to something that we've heard. And then that's distracting for us. So I found teaching my own Jupiter sign a challenge. But I learned a lot about myself through teaching people that learn in a similar way to me. So I'm going to bring on the amazing Mychal. And I have to say, Mychal is the hero of the hour, because he was the one that sorted out the things that I couldn't get sorted. It all should sound like pressing a few buttons, but actually it was far more complicated than that. And I had so many things beeping and at me. So Mychal, thank you very much. I love what you do, because you do things very similarly to my friends in India. You encompass yoga and all sorts of things. So your Jupiter was in Virgo, which I'll cover in the next segment. So Jupiter and Virgo students, I find are really, as the word, the keywords, precise, and they like things to be nice and clear, and they like, to have a tidy environment. I found that they're natural critics, so I used to give them a pile of books and a green pen and help me marking. And all the self-assessment and peer assessment I found worked really, really well with Jupiter and Virgo students, because they want things to be the best standard that it could possibly be. But I found them to be a little bit touchy about competition. They wanted to be the best, and they didn't want to think of themselves as being anything other than the best. And so that could be difficult in the classroom. But anyway, so what were your experiences as a learner?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I think that as a learner, I definitely was a super Virgo, and there are other things going on in my chart that are very, very, very Virgo. And so anyway, but I was a super Virgo in everything, and a big part of that for me was that one culture environment growing up in the Bahamas. There's this thing that we're told that you're from the Caribbean. The only thing people think people do in the Caribbean is hang out in coconut trees all day and eat tropical fruits. So no one really expects you to know a lot about anything. So I think that when you come from the Caribbean, there's this social pressure that's placed on you to be the best, and to know more and to do more and to strive to understand more, because it's a cultural thing, it's a colonial thing, there's a lot tied into that. But I definitely took that heavily onto myself, and I was always reading and always learning and always trying to excel intellectually. And I think that a lot of the other parts of my life in my childhood may have suffered because of that, but I was constantly trying to learn more and be the absolute greatest as a kid. And and that resulted in me graduating from high school 2 years earlier than I should have. So in the Caribbean, we go up to the 12th grade, and I graduated in the 10th grade because I was completely done with school. And I said, these people don't have anything to teach me anymore. I'm going to graduate in grade 10. And I found out how to do that. All you had to do was take our equivalent of the, I'm not sure what the exams are called in England. Is it the O levels or the A levels?
The A levels are for the 17 and 18-year-olds, but we do GCSEs, which is the general for
Right,
younger
right, right.
students
So,
around 15.
so in the Caribbean, because we follow an English structure, we also do what we call the BGCSEs, which is the Bahamas version of that. So I took all of those in grade 10. I took my SATs in grade 10, and I went to university when I was 15 years old because of this Virgoan impetus to really just get out and be in the world and learn at a higher level. And yeah, that's the story of my life.
Because you are so amazing, the things that you do. And when we had our interview and we talked about, just you're so knowledgeable. It's amazing. I went the more conventional way. I went to university at 18. I was the first person in my family to go to university. So there was nobody to sort of guide me. As a Jupiter in Cancer, I kind of needed that familiarity, that someone to take me under their wing, I think. Well, whereas I think what I hear you saying is that you actually felt confident enough to pursue a knowledge that was going to satisfy what you needed. I didn't know what I wanted to do until much later in my life. But I thank you so much for everything that you did today, including keeping me calm.
It's completely fine. I think that with this whole quarantine situation, we're all having to learn how to interact with the world in a new way. And in the beginning, it's new territory for all of us. So I'm just super excited to see what you do now that you have it all under your belt. I mean, I'm excited to see what comes next for you with this, because I think that you're doing a great job, and I really appreciate seeing your work. And it's amazing that more astrologers are stepping forward in this way to hold these sorts of conversations, because they're so meaningful. And I really admire your work that you do with Jupiter and Saturn, and the work that you do with children. So I'm happy to be able to talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. And just to say something about our educational system, because I spent when I was talking to Saul, I was kind of negative on it. One thing that we do well in education is that at the Jupiter return, 11 or 12, we offer students a variety of lessons that they can learn from. So we let them teach, let them learn music, art, everything else. But at the Saturn opposition around 14, 15, we ask them to choose the subjects they're going to do for their exams. So it's a very Saturnine process. And they have that pressure that you will have all your life about being examined. You go to a dentist, they're going to get examined. You're going to take your driving license, you're going to have an examination. Doctors, all your life you got to be examined. But the first time you meet a real exam is at the Saturn opposition.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And it's the same thing in the Bahamas. We have that same sort of structure in terms of how our BGCSEs are set up. and you go through this general course of learning, and then you ultimately choose your specialization. And I'm completely all about people being specialists in whatever field that they're in, because I think that we have a lot of generalists, but I'm definitely into people having a specialized thing that they do well and that they do masterfully, which is probably, once again, my Jupiter and Virgo speaking up. But at the same time, I do very much appreciate and find value in just a general education in the liberal arts. I think that that's also very important, because the liberal arts were built to teach you and to teach us how to be more functional human beings. That's the purpose of having liberal arts or a general study in general. It's meant to teach you how to take this knowledge into your life and how you approach culture and how you approach the world. And so yeah, I'm all about general study, but I do think that after you've done a course in general study, you should, figure out where do I specifically want to invest my time, because as human beings, everything that we do is really built within this construct of time. And it's like, where do I specifically want to invest my time? With this time that I've been given, who do I want to become? What is my center of gravity? What is my sense of direction? And all of those things are time-based questions. And I think that when we frame our lives against the greater backdrop of time, then it really allows all of us, or it really goads all of us in the direction of seeking out something that is clear and seeking out a specific path that we will establish our magnum opus of our life on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree. And, I just think that, like I keep saying, the modern educational system isn't geared for that. It's geared for, keeping everybody working at the same pace and learning the same things at the same time. It's not geared to, allow the independent search or quest for knowledge. It's kind of like you have to do the ground-based work with everybody else. You're not allowed to poke ahead or to stay behind and do something you're interested in. You're constantly moving according to what the curriculum says.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy actually. And I was saying to someone the other day that I had really wished, because you would ask Sol what happened around her Jupiter return, and I was thinking about what happened around mine. And around my Jupiter return, I really decided that I was going to be an astrologer. Like, that is when I decided that I would really dig my heels into astrology, because I was exposed to it about probably 2 years earlier, and I was moving within esoteric circles. But that decision to really become an astrologer solidified within me at the age of 12 years old. And I mean, I grew with it, and I grew the entire basis of the practice that I have today during those years as a child. And I'm really deeply grateful that during those years as a child, I had the opportunity to work out all the kinks of my approach to astrology and my approach to my spirituality and my approach to Kabbalah and the tarot, because those are the things that really serve as the pillars and the foundations of my life. And so now, as an adult, I'm 28 years old now. Now I really feel like I've had my apprenticeship, I've had my initiation, and I really feel secure in my practice. But what was missing for me during those years was this really deep sense of support from the environment. And I'm not blaming the environment or anything, but there was a deep sense of support coming from a very orthodox, fundamentalist, Christian sort of country. My budding interests in astrology and the Western mystery tradition and yoga, like that, those budding interests weren't supported in a way that actually made me feel like these were career paths. So like a lot of other people, I went down a more traditional route. I went to university. I became a broadcast journalist because I felt like that was the thing to do. Become a journalist. You write, you speak, go to journalism school, was what my family told me. And a lot of the things I wanted to do weren't really cultivated as a result of that. And I look back at my initial years in university in a bittersweet way, because I'm grateful for that education. But at the same time, I wonder what would have happened if my family had shipped me off to India when I was 15 years old. And what would have happened if I had spent those 5 years in India as opposed to those 5 years in journalism school? Who would I have become had I had different experiences? So I think that there's a little bit of a slight sorrow that follows me around because of that. But I'm grateful for the experiences I've had.
Yeah, when I was at my Jupiter return, I thought astrology was a load of rubbish. It was when my mom was reading the horoscopes and she came to Cancer, and we were supposed to be home loving and shy. And I thought, this is a load of rubbish. But at my second Jupiter return around the age of 24 is when I rediscovered, I discovered that, my moon is in Leo and I have different planets in different signs. And from then on, I was hooked. And, when I was 36, I threw myself into formal studies with astrology. When I was 48, I think that was the year that I got my actual my professional qualifications as an astrologer. So even though I missed the Jupiter return, and the same way, I wonder what would have happened to me if, I didn't come across that home loving and shy business at the age of 12. Maybe I would have had 12 more years of studying what really became the most important thing to me. So, but we can't look back at our life with regrets. We have to, make the most of what we have, which is another really handy use for Jupiter. It helps us to take advantage and to find opportunities for ourselves. And if we understand how our Jupiter works and the significant stages, we can, use it to our advantage.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I mean now, what the gifts that my Jupiter has brought me is that I'm now, or I've taken all of those experiences and all of that experience being a kid with astrology and the Western mystery tradition, and I've used my Virgo to build that into a very workable curriculum, and that's what I teach over at my school, the Oraculo School of Astrology. And so I'm really grateful that I had that experience and that I also went and had a university experience, because I think that something that was special about the university experience for me was that it taught me how to organize information. And of all of the gifts that I could have possibly have gotten from that, I think that's the number one way, or the number one thing that I took away from that: how to organize information, but also how to teach the information that you've organized within yourself. And so when I teach today, because I've always felt this deep inner inclination to being a teacher, when I teach today, I teach with that backdrop in my mind of, okay, so if I were in a university setting, how would I be organizing this as a curriculum, as a syllabus? What should be taught first? What should be taught second? And I think having that as a background has really made me a better teacher of astrology today. So even though in my mind, I tend to think, oh, that's my university life over there, and whatever the thoughts are or the trauma is that I had around that, and here's my astrology life over here. The things that I've experienced over there have completely served in helping me organize information and disseminate information with greater clarity and a greater sense of confidence. So I'm grateful for everything. And even though sometimes I do like to complain and say, I wanted to go to dance school and they sent me off to whatever, and I should have gone to Cuba earlier, because I went to Cuba as well to be a dancer, and I would have wanted to have been there from when I was much younger. And so I do this back and forth in life of looking back and feeling regret, but then realizing that all of my experiences got me to where I am. And truthfully, it's been an amazing journey, and I'm just really grateful for everything.
I really liked the way that when you were talking about organizing, you're actually using a lot of Jupiter in Virgo keywords, that need to have things in order and to be meticulous with the way you deliver your lessons. I think that is very much Jupiter in Virgo. Okay, Michael, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
It's been an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
You too.
All right. Hey, Sonal, you there? You ready? Hopefully she's there. Hello, Sonal.
Am I upside down? Oh my God.
Why are you upside down? You don't have, there we go. What was that about? Don't you love live streaming?
Oh my God. I don't know. Okay,
I'm
is
gonna
that
give-
better?
That's much better. You look lovely. I'm just going to give a few Jupiter sign things, and then I'm going to ask you about your experiences with Jupiter in Virgo. Libra. So Jupiter in Leo. So if your child was born in 2014 or 2002, your child will have Jupiter in Leo. So with Leo, we always think about the stage. Jupiter and Leo can dominate that stage or do things to bring attention to themselves, but they need to be taught how to share the stage. It's very much the opposite of Aquarius, where they don't want to be on that stage. They want to do their own thing, but Leo wants to be seen. And then the next one along is Jupiter and Virgo, which we talked about with Mychal and his experiences. And so if your child was born in 2004 or 2015, they could have Jupiter and Virgo. But Jupiter in Libra is about relationships, and Jupiter and Libra students, I found a challenge to teach as well, because they always need a counterbalance to get the juices flowing. And
But that is, you're talking tropically, right?
Yeah, tropical.
Yes, but I actually have sort of Jupiter in Virgo sidereally.
Oh, okay, like Mychal. Okay, so just to explain to people who might not understand, Sonal and Mychal and me kind of used Sonal, Mychal definitely used the sidereal zodiac. I'm just can use it if I need to. I'm a tropical astrologer. So there's about 23 degrees, and that's because tropical astrologers base their work on the seasons, whereas Vedic astrologers base their work on the fixed stars. So we have a different way of using the zodiac and different techniques that we use. One doesn't invalidate the other. They just work differently. It's like apples and oranges. You can't say, oh, apples aren't a fruit because they have similarities. They're just different to oranges. Okay, so anyway, okay, take it from the Vedic perspective then, Sonal. How do you experience your learning with Jupiter in Virgo, and how does it compare to Mychal's?
See, Jupiter in every sign, as my guru will say, it's Shiva in every sign, right? And that's why we always begin our, Jupiter in all 12 signs. We always say Om Gurave Namaha 12 times, right? That's like the standard practice. So Jupiter is always kind of beneficial because it's one of the greatest benefics. And if you look at the astronomy of Jupiter, it's like 60 plus moons, and like one of the biggest gas planets. So it gives you a lot of clue as to its beneficence, right? And so Jupiter in Virgo, it also depends on if it is retrograde or not, because a Jupiter which is retrograde is extra powerful, 3 times more powerful compared to a direct Jupiter. And so, and it will give you results of the opposite sign. Well, at least that's the Vedic view anyway.
So I found something similar. I found that, just because a sign is opposite doesn't mean it can't help you to understand whatever sign that you're examining. In fact, it enhances an understanding of the sign. Every time I speak to you, Sonal, I learn a little bit more. It's just amazing.
Thank you.
About
that's the idea. We are in Jupiter domain.
Yeah, because sometimes when I'm learning from a Vedic astrologer, I feel overwhelmed, with new terms and new ways of looking at things. It's a bit too much for me to take on, but a little bit by bit. I don't think I'll ever be a Vedic astrologer because I got my hands full of Western astrology. But it's always interesting to hear a different perspective. So where are you? Where are you, Sonal?
Okay, so I'm actually at Watkins. As you can see, it's kind of one of the biggest. Shall I go outside and give you a little tour?
Yes, because I haven't been to Cecil Court in a long time.
Okay, so this is kind of one of the biggest esoteric bookshops in the world, and one of the oldest as well. If you can see here, this is Cecil Court, and both sides, and that's Watkins right there. Can you see, Alex?
Yes, I can. And just to say, it's near Leicester Square. It's right in the central part of London.
Yes. Yeah, so that's kind of like the Charing Cross and all the traffic
where
there.
all the theaters are. Just to
Sorry?
help people. I said where all the theaters are, so people who
Yeah.
don't know London, that they'll know where you are. You're right in the heart of London.
Yes.
10-minute walk, you're in
And
Buckingham
so
Palace.
it is, yeah. And you can see the big Ganesha
Oh
there.
yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I don't think there is any book, whether from self-help to anything, that you can't find here or locate here. As you can see, there's kind of like stuff galore.
Oh, I don't see growing pains.
It's not here, it's downstairs section.
Oh, you're upstairs. Okay, that's right.
Yes,
All the
I'm
astrology books are downstairs.
upstairs.
Okay.
So that's why we go downstairs. Let me just take you quickly to I mean, look at the crystals here. Can you see?
Yes. Gorgeous.
Yeah. And this is, I think, again, more crystals. And this is like the tarot shelf. And this is just the books on tarot. And this is not even touching the iceberg here. There we are. This is, I think this must be the biggest tarot section in the world.
Yes, I think so too.
It
Huge
has
collection
sort of
cards.
over 200 tarot decks, you know. Sarah's going to help you.
Hello.
Sarah knows a lot about tarot.
Is she doing
And
readings this afternoon?
we have the Japa Malas. Sorry? Sorry?
I
These
asked
are
if she
all
was
the
doing readings today.
Malas. If she's what?
If she is doing consultations today, is she doing readings today?
No, I am.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. So I will also take you quickly to the consultations place and then we continue downstairs. So this is where the consultations happen. You know?
Oh yeah, right by the window. Lovely.
Yeah. So always whether you can see my Brahat Samhita text, the Vedic text there. Can you
Mhm.
see?
Yes.
Paramiras.
Yes.
And then, you know, yes, that's me over there. So there we go.
Excellent.
So shall we go downstairs?
Yes. While you're going downstairs, I'll just talk through the remaining signs so you get yourself settled. Is that okay? You can turn your camera off if you like, if you don't want us watching you go down the stairs.
Yes, there we go. So
okay, so the next sign along is Jupiter in Scorpio. These are children who are born in 2006 or 2017. Jupiter and Scorpio students can be quite intensive learners. They like to do research. They are interested in the very thing that Sonal is showing us, the occult, life mysteries. They're very good at analyzing things and understanding people's motivations. The next sign along is Sagittarius. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and these children tend to be super learners, like Sol was describing her daughter, how she just naturally took to languages, and she has a natural interest in learning. You know, these children have a lot of energy, and they need to have this energy channeled in the right direction, guided by the teachers. They need to be kept safe, of course, because they can be a little bit rambunctious and not so keen on keeping themselves safe because they'd like to take chances. And then the final sign of this talk is Jupiter and Capricorn. Jupiter is in its detriment in this one. It doesn't mean that a student is not bright. It just means that they have a different way of structuring their learning, and they like to have a lot of scaffolding, and they're not likely to take the chances that Jupiter in Sagittarius likes to take. So these children are born 2008, or they will be born later in 2020 when because Jupiter is going to move into Capricorn in December. Okay, so now you're safe. You didn't fall down the stairs or anything. Good. The way my day's been going, I'd be terrified to go down the stairs.
Oops,
oh,
sorry.
There it is on display. There it is.
Yes. See?
I think it's signed by the author too. So if you want
is
to
it?
learn more about lockdown learning, this is the book. This is my book, Growing Pains. It has Jupiter through all the signs, as well as Saturn, which I'll talk about in the future. But this is Jupiter for learning. So if you have children of different ages, this book will give you some ideas about how you can teach them.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff here.
Yeah, there's loads
Magic.
of stuff. I saw Nick Campion's book too.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff on magic. There is stuff on spells, 5,000 spells.
Wow.
I mean,
And
this is the original Madame Blavatsky and, you know, the whole, the Golden Dawn. This is all where it began. And it's mostly unchanged. And what's interesting is that the big books still come down. You know, the suppliers bring the books down a chute, which is
oh,
still
wow.
there. And I don't want to go in because it's kind of like off limits. So, but here we are. That's magic and occult.
That's amazing. And just to say again, you know, Watkins is a place, if you have interest in the esoteric, you can spend the whole day there. And I think I've spent a couple hours in there looking at stuff and talking to people. And because, you know, if you have unusual interests like astrology or tarot or whatever, it can be hard to meet people. Well,
I mean, there are
easy
tarot
online,
decks. There are rare tarot decks. Can you see that?
yes, I can see that. Yes.
The rare tarot decks. This may interest Mychal. Mychal, if you're there.
I think he had to go because we were a
Okay.
little bit late starting and had to, we all had to.
And then there's stuff on Indian philosophy. Everything to do with the Upanishads is here, the Yoga Sutras, you know, the Bhagavad Gita. There are many versions of the Bhagavad Gita right here. And all the
I need to get a new
Puranas
copy.
is there, if you can see. I mean, this is one of my favorite remedies, kind of, you know, Jupiter-Mercury conjunction. And it's almost always a Bhagavad Gita remedy, you know. So, yeah, so as you can see, it's really exciting to be here.
And if somebody wants to have a reading with you, Sonal, they can come visit you at Watkins. Do you work online?
Sorry?
Do you work online? Do you do readings online?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
On Zoom and yeah.
I'll show everybody's contact details in just a second.
Yeah. And we are also starting free classes with Astrology Lodge of London. It's free beginners Vedic classes. So bare bones is for Western astrologers, open to everyone who has no inkling whatsoever of the Vedic Jyotish tradition.
Excellent. Because it can be really overwhelming if you're not used to the Vedic tradition to get into, you know, to find a way into it. You know, you don't know what to ask or who to go to, but you know, the Watkins is a great place to pick up a few basics and get started.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So, yeah. So now we are in.
Oh, sorry. Does Watkins have online sales? Can you order books online and crystals and things?
I think you have to call in person.
Okay.
They don't really do online at all because they are like sort of traditional.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
most of their stuff is you have to walk into the shop for readings. You have to come in person.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you so much, Sonal, for all your support.
You're welcome.
And for your help. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for showing us around Watkins. It makes me want to come up and visit.
Yes. Cool.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Alex.
Thank you. I'm just going to sign off now by sharing my screen. Hopefully that will be one thing that I can do right today.
Okay.
So just how to contact any of the readers you might have seen, if I can get my PowerPoint up. So here's all our email addresses. That if you are interested in any of our work, this is how to contact us. Sol is www.sol-with.com, www.alextrenoweth.co.uk. Sonal is www.circleofdivineastrology.com, and Mychal is oraculastrology.com. So he does a great school, lots of lessons. He incorporates, like Sonal does, a lot of disciplines. So there's a talk coming up with Rod Chang on comets for the cosmic intelligency. Please do
Lovely.
pop over, visit us on Facebook, like, subscribe, and hit the notification buttons on our YouTube. And thank you for joining us. And thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
putting up
you,
with,
Alex. Very
putting up with,
kind.
putting up with the delay. So
Okay.
best wishes to all of you. Stay safe, and wishing you much
Bye.
Jupiterian love. Bye.
Bye. Bye.